And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. It's 12:39 a.m. on the East Coast. We are sitting here after an incredible turning point within the college football season. We knew that we had some forks in the road in terms of the conference championship races and the college football playoff race. We have a result as Notre Dame takes down number 1 Clemson. Florida outlasts and runs past the Georgia Bulldogs. A lot to get into here as we do this instant reaction show here on the Cover 3 podcast. As always, thanks to those of you who are tuning in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also video form, youtube.com/cover3, and also in the CBS Sports app on your OTT device. So throw us on the big screen via your Apple TV or your Roku. You'll get Tom Fornelli, Barton Simmons, myself breaking down this dramatic and thematic Week 10. I just, we've got this like rush at the end of the night with, double overtime in South Bend, trying to tie up all the loose ends. And I feel like I want to hit what just happened, right? Because on one hand, the number 1 team in the country just lost. Clemson has not lost a regular season game since the 2017 season. And on the other hand, am I being a Clemson apologist by just also not coming out with a lot of panic signs? Aside from Trevor Lawrence being out, aside from the defensive losses, I kind of think that was just a great football game between 2 top 5 teams, a game that I would love to see again in the ACC championship game. 2 different programs that are running, going about their business in different ways. Clemson, more talented without a doubt. Notre Dame doing the program building thing. Again, I understand that I was out here on the Locks podcast and on CBS Sports HQ picking Clemson -5.5, but I hoped I loaded that with all of my belief that this is going to be a good game, and Notre Dame just won a good game. So I don't know, I almost feel like I'm coming into this not with enough hot takes out of it, but with a lot of appreciation for what's happening at Notre Dame for sure.
I don't think it's a hot take at all to sit and say that there's nothing to panic about for Clemson, because that was just 2 really good teams playing a really good, entertaining, fun football game that actually managed to live up to the hype that we usually don't see in these kind of matchups.
True.
But that was just a good time. And you're right, Clemson lost the game. And I don't think it was because Trevor Lawrence didn't play, because it's not like DJ Uiagalelei played poorly. He threw for more yards in the game than any other quarterback in history has thrown against Notre Dame. And I don't know if I think clearly Trevor Lawrence is Trevor Lawrence. So maybe he makes an impact in that game, but I don't think Trevor Lawrence alone changes the outcome of it, because I think Notre Dame just played that well. Offensively, defensively, they hung with Clemson. And I do think that the bigger problems Clemson dealt with were the injuries elsewhere. I think that, especially in the offensive line, because they what's the kid's name? They lost their left guard during the game. So they were down there, and then they lost another guard during the game. And Notre Dame was already kind of getting the edge on them in the trenches to begin with. And losing him, I thought, really hurt them. But there's no reason to panic with your Clemson, because I don't think anybody's going to punish the number 1 team for losing on the road in double overtime to the number 4 team
without your starting quarterback.
But even if Trevor Lawrence had played, what could you do? If you're a pollster or a member of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, if Trevor Lawrence plays in that game, has the same performance Uiagalelei has, and Clemson loses 47-40 in double overtime, what are you going to knock them down to 10? No, you're not. They're going to be in the top 4 again on Sunday when the new polls come out. And if the College Football Playoff poll came out this week, they'd still be in the top 4, and they deserve to still be in the top 4.
Yeah, I thought that this game, because look, yes, Trevor Lawrence wasn't playing, but like you said, DJ threw for 430 yards. What do you want him to do?
How much? That's more than Trevor's career high. It's not just the most against a Notre Dame defense. It's also more than Trevor Lawrence's career high, which was set earlier this year against Georgia Tech.
Yeah. So. Okay. But this game was, to me, much more about Notre Dame than Clemson. We'd been talking all week about Brian Kelly
Is it validation? Like, is it just sort of like, okay, all right, you talked big and then you went and proved it?
Yeah. Yeah. Just they played like they were a big boy. Like they weren't acting. They weren't there over there just sort of gimmicking their way through that. They basically told like Brian Kelly all week's like, we're going to run the ball and this is what we're going to do. And first play of the game, they break off a 65-yard run. Like they played a good football game and they have good players. And that's the other thing too, is you opened the your comment about it and saying, Clemson's and Notre Dame is, I don't know if I lost you guys there. Clemson's more talented and Notre Dame is program building, doing the program building thing. But I think we saw some real talent on Notre Dame's side. Like there's Brian Brzee, the 5-star, Miles Murphy, the 5-star, DJ Uiagalelei, the 5-star. But then, Michael Mayer, the true freshman 5-star for Notre Dame, was making plays. Kyle Hamilton, the sophomore 5-star safety, is making plays. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who is a former high 3-star guy, but is a potential first-round draft pick type of guy. Like they have players too. I think that there was this real resolution that Notre Dame kind of shrugged off and shed this gritty underdog story of just outside the blue bloods. And I think that it's going to take more than just one game to further validate that. But for now, Brian Kelly is right. They are 29-3 and they have won 13 straight and they are a legitimate power right now. They're playing that way. And props to Ian Book. Our boy played lights out. Like there was never a moment where it was like, well, man, if only they had someone better than Ian Book at quarterback. No, he played well. He was in control of that game from start to finish. He had the fumble into the end zone, but other than that, it was a pretty lights out effort out of him.
That was the best game of Ian Book's career.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Maybe not statistically. Like if you look at the box score, you might not be like, oh, wow, especially when you're comparing it to what DJ did. But just the plays he made when he made them. And then, like you mentioned, the fact that he had that fumble in the third quarter. And a lot of dudes, that happens in a game like that, in a moment like that, and they turtle. It's over. And he didn't do that. He just fought back. And then at the end of the game in the fourth, after Clemson took the lead and Notre Dame gets the ball, and I think they went 3 and out, another chance to turtle. Doesn't do it. They get the ball at their own 9-yard line. They got 1:48, 2 timeouts, no panic, calmly moves them down, scrambles when nothing's there, gets out of bounds. And then under pressure on a blitz from Clemson, he looks up, finds Avery Davis open over the middle of the field deep, throws a perfect pass with the pressure at his face, hits him to set up the 1st and goal. It set up the game-tying touchdown. It was like I've dogged Ian Book plenty on this show. I think we've all given him some grief on this show, but that was far and away the greatest moment of Ian Book's college career.
I kept betting against it, not literally betting against it. I wasn't live wagering, but as I was sitting there watching it, I was like, well, now it's in Ian Book's hands. Let's see how this works out. And I was just continually proven wrong, like time and time again throughout this entire evening. So, I mean, you tip your cap to him without a doubt. I feel like that was a strong performance, and I do feel like I come away with it with a lot more Notre Dame feels than I do major adjustments. Though my big thought for Clemson is that it's really, 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 really hard to win a bunch of football games in a row in college football, and I almost love when streaks end because you remember all those narrow margins for victory, the Boston College game, even just last week, and all along the way, man, at some point, even with the most heroic performances from DJ Uiagalelei, Cornell Powell coming up, second straight game that he just had okay, no, we're not going to get anything from Joseph McGotter or Frank Ladson. I guess that I'm just going to have to get out there. Somebody who could have left in the transfer portal with the way that the personnel was looking. But yeah, no, it's a great win for Notre Dame. And what do you, so I guessed number 2 in the polls.
So That's what I was about to ask. Fun thought experiment, because we talked about this last week, like, whether we still had Clemson at 1 or Alabama at 1. I'm thinking when I turn in my CBS ballot tomorrow, I'm going to have Notre Dame at number 1. It's got the best win in the country.
Good. You have a fair argument, and I think Notre Dame gets first place votes, but just because Alabama had gained so many first place votes on Clemson, that's why I put them at number 1 and Notre Dame at number 2. And again, that is a post I write every Saturday night guessing what the new AP poll is going to be. I think it's Alabama 1, Notre Dame 2.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it's going to be. But I think that on my ballot, I think there's a very legitimate argument that if you want to put Notre Dame at number 1, if any voter does or any of us do on our ballot,
no one's got a better win.
No.
Well, so yeah, agreed. But like Notre Dame's 3 on mine. Because Clemson was 3 before this on mine. Like I downgraded Clemson a little bit behind Alabama, behind Ohio State, because I just didn't think that they were playing as well as those guys. And you could make a case that yes, this win is big, but Notre Dame, they hadn't really been all that impressive before. But I go back to the idea that in the way they were trying to win those games, they actually were impressive. But I want to get back to Ian Book too to make this point. As good as he played, I thought Notre Dame's game plan kind of allowed him to be successful too. Like there was never a moment where it felt like they were asking him to do something he couldn't handle. Like they were giving him. I just thought it was a really good offensively called game. And I'm sitting here too, and like when they show the shots of in the press box of Tommy Rees as the offensive coordinator, and they're like, he's 28 years old, and like my man looks 28 too. Like he's a 28-year-old kid, and he is calling a game number 4 versus number 1 against a $2.5 million coordinator, the best in the game, in Brent Venables, and he just put up 47 points, and little old Ian Book turned him into a game-winning quarterback. And I just think Notre Dame has done, and Brian Kelly's continued to do such a good job in building his staff, making the right hires ever since the Brian Van Gorder fiasco. Like he's made good hires. Clark Lee on the other side. I mean, clearly their game plan was look, if DJ is going to throw for 430 yards on us to beat us, congratulations. But Travis Etienne ain't going to run the ball on us. They're not going to run the ball on us. Kyle Hamilton's going to be the 8th defender in the box, like even if he's coming for 15 yards out, and they ain't going to run the ball on us. And they didn't. And I just think that that team is really sharp right now in terms of having a plan, a complementary plan to win football games.
But don't brink worked. I mean, so many Clemson field goals in regulation.
Do you guys want to see my impression of the Tommy Rees cam?
Yes.
All right. Like, why is it so close to his face? Every time they show it, it's like there's this much space between the camera and his face. It's like, dude, back it up a little bit.
It's a tight press box. They got a lot of analysts in there. All right. So I guess then it's time for me to I'm not going to apologize. I'm not. There is a limiting factor with the Georgia Bulldogs, and it was on full display. Because when you only complete 12 passes, 12 passes were caught is the more appropriate way to say it, because 9 of them were completions and 3 of them were interceptions out of 26 attempts to throw the ball. You're not going to be able to win football games in 2020. And I had higher expectations. I thought that there was another ceiling, and there's not. Georgia can beat 8 of its 10 opponents playing like that. Can't beat 2. And that's what it's going to be. Georgia's going to finish 8-2 with losses to Alabama and Florida, teams with better quarterbacks, teams with better passing games. And everything else, they can ride defense and running game, but not against Florida, not against this team. So let's see. What is the hate? What do the hates say? Are you going to apologize, you Gator hating Georgia homer? You owe a mea culpa to all Gator fans on the podcast, or you can keep bleep, 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 bleep. Your choice, you Georgia POS.
Is that a real message?
That is a real message from Robert.
Oh, Robert.
Shout out to Robert. Put him in his place.
Oh, man. Well, where is it, Chip? I'm waiting. Still waiting.
The apology.
Where's your apology? It's like like the thing is too. Yes, Stetson Bennett is not good enough. Yes, Dwan Mathis is not good enough. Yes, the JT Daniels mystery continues. Yes, this whole Georgia quarterback like fiasco has been a total like what's the old TV show about like events take like it's
the old TV show about events.
What's the
show?
What's the TV show about oh man, fuck. I'm just late. It's late. It's a mystery. It's a mystery.
Unsolved mysteries?
No, that's not the one I'm thinking of. Like the old. I can't even. I don't have the vocabulary.
Mythbusters.
I was thinking that like the JT Daniels might be like a Weekend at Bernie's situation where like maybe he's dead and they're trying to keep it a secret.
That could be it. But before I just started babbling, my point was actually like not even the quarterback thing, but they give up 44 points to Florida. Like Florida moved the ball like this world-class heavyweight defense. Florida was just fine moving the football, and they got about a half of Kyle Pitts along the way. And I mean, Georgia's just they're not quite what we hoped they'd be. They're just not. And I don't know if Jamie Newman would have changed things, but I suspect he probably wouldn't have. I just think this is who they are. They're still who they are. And this is the big jump we thought was going to happen wasn't going to happen. And Florida, by the way, is like that Texas A&M game, the one loss they have on their record. They scored like every possession but two.
Yeah.
You know, so like even their loss is like a good loss.
Yeah.
This if not for that, they'd be sitting here, you know, we'd be talking about like if they play Bama close, even with the loss, they're in the playoffs, you know, in the championship game. So I mean, Florida's good.
Here's a thought exercise because you brought it up. If Georgia and Texas A&M play, who wins?
No, I'm not on this Texas A&M because it's real easy to come out of this week with one of the talking points being that Texas A&M's a really good football team. I'm not ready to go there.
Though.
I know I will admit might, but I'm just saying I'm not ready to take today's results for both Texas A&M and Georgia and totally flip my perception that I had going into the week, which had Georgia 6.5 to 8.5 points ahead of Texas A&M.
All right, fine. But going back to your point though, Barton, about the defense, because it's the latest example that an elite defense can be an elite defense, but in this day and age of football and where we're at, when you go up against an elite offense, it doesn't matter how good your defense is because there is no defense that can consistently stop a well-executed, well-designed offense. And that's exactly what Georgia went up against Alabama when it gave up 41. And it's what Georgia was dealing with today when it gave up 44 to Florida. And that's the thing. Like now it's 2 years now. It's what we've talked about. That's what Georgia needs to realize. Like until they get an elite offense, Kirby can have a great defense. It's not going to matter in these games.
So I guess, do you accept my apology?
No, I don't.
I'm sorry for being wrong.
Are you still on the Dogs Pod thing or what?
Yeah, are you jumping off?
No.
All right. Well, if I tell you that let's see, where's that stat at? That the 31% completion rate is the second lowest in a Georgia game this century. Does that help?
To Listen, I already had my
against something we all figured and derided all season long is a horrible defense. Georgia was only able to complete 31% of its passes.
I had my heart ripped out by Memphis earlier today. I don't really have any feelings anymore. Like I understand that you got to go through the darkness to be able to see the dawn. You got to be able to live through it to be able to come out on the other side. And so when Georgia does live up to the same promise that got everybody on this podcast in on being a Georgia pod, it will have been there all along the way.
See, I'm thinking we just need to make the transition official that we go from dogs to hogs.
Ooh, that's compelling.
Yes. I mean, like on face value, yes. In the run up to the baby being born, there was like a principle where it's like, hey, do you think we need this? And I'd be like, oh, is it less than $75? Yeah, sure. is this gonna end this conversation and alleviate it? There's just like sort of some face value. It's like, oh, you want me to buy in on Arkansas? Yeah. I don't care what it costs. It's less than $75. I'm Sam Pittman. Yes, I'm in without a doubt. Like, cool. We'll burn any money or credibility or honor for Sam Pittman and the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Good.
By the way, the TV show that I was trying to think about, it was The Twilight Zone.
I was waiting for you to be like,
not.
I was waiting for you to be like, the show I was thinking about, you remember Friends? That's what it reminded me of.
No, it's The Twilight Zone. Sorry, it's late.
Okay. It's coming up on the other side. We take a look at Jim Harbaugh, the Khakis, and a frustrating start for Michigan, and also a big win for Indiana. Next. So Lock Infinity comes crashing down, 2-0 start to its existence. And again, I teased it at the beginning of the podcast, but I really had it ringing in my head. I think it was on the 2 p.m. top of the hour update on CBS Sports HQ. I shouted you out, Barton. And Hakeem Dermish on the other side, Cover 3 podcast listener. You start speaking. You start speaking that Cover 3 lingo. He's just there. And I mentioned that you had texted. I said, Barton had a great point. He said, we might lose Lock Infinity, but the content from a Michigan loss would be fantastic. 38-21. It was never even really close.
No.
Indiana just went out and won. And we kept hanging on these. Michigan had some fight and they had a couple of responses along the way, but man, you sit back at the end of the game, take myself out of sort of the flow of it from, 12 to 3:30 or so. And I'm like, man, the Michigan never really had a chance. I just, is the content going to be worth it? I think so. Right.
I mean, like the Jim Harbaugh content or just the Michigan content?
I pair the two together because it's the same audience. So for our purposes, it's literally how many numbers of people are invested. Let me zoom in on my touch screen to the county and we can hit on it. And all of a sudden we've got higher numbers of people that are interested in some college football content and what we got to say about Jim Harbaugh. The Michigan fan base is going to want to hear, and the anti-Michigan fan base is going to want to hear what's going on with the Wolverines for the next, 3 weeks or so. We don't know if the Wisconsin game is going to happen this coming week, which is already a spotlight moment just because the Badgers are continuing to deal with positive COVID tests. They have just returned to limited workouts, basically. Mm-hmm. They're back at June, right? They're not hitting. They're just going through limited conditioning drills. So, it's going to be one of the big talking points of the week. So I'm trying to ready myself.
I still don't think he's going to get fired.
He might. No, I'm not there. I think it's more of an assessment. We got to We got to pull everything out. We got to shine the light on the entire body of work. I don't think he's going to get fired because of this game.
My takeaway or my theory or my guess after this one is that they are going to want somebody's head. And I think it's going to be Don Brown's head before it's Jim Harbaugh, because like defensively, there has been no pass rush. And in the secondary, it's comical how last week Michigan State was just chucking the ball deep, and it was either completing passes or drawing flags on Michigan. And today, Indiana was like, oh, shit, it worked for Michigan State. And Michael Penix was just chucking the ball deep. Some were completed, and when they weren't, a Michigan defensive back was grabbing somebody most often for no reason. Like, there were balls that didn't have a chance to be caught, and I think that Michigan defensive backs were just doing it out of habit of grabbing guys when they didn't have to and getting flagged for it and letting Indiana move down the field. And it's just, and then Michigan jumped off sides 5 times in the first half just off of a clap. The same thing that every freaking offense in the country is doing on a regular basis. They got Michigan because their pass rush has been so ineffective that everybody on that front is cheating to try to get a good jump off the ball to maybe get some pressure on the quarterback, that they were jumped off sides. And on 2 of the free plays, Indiana got touchdowns out of. And it's like, it's one thing if you lose to your rival like you did last week, because, in rivalry games, weird things happen. But to lose to Indiana is another thing entirely. And I think that we should talk also about the fact that, oh my God, Indiana might be a top 10 team. But if you're a Michigan fan or a Michigan player, there is no aspect of today's game where you could zero in on it and say, well, at least this went well, because nothing went well. There's nothing that you can look at in this game and be like, all right, well, this is a reason to feel good about the future, because it just doesn't exist.
Everything that's happened this year since that Minnesota game to open the season has been a bad look for Michigan. Everything, every related game, every game with any sort of border adjacency to that game has been a bad property? Look. Not even transitive. Yeah, I guess transitive property, but just sort of all the different ways that the ripple effect, all the sort of retroactive perspective we can put on that game, it all looks bad. Minnesota, we go to that Minnesota game, we're like, oh, look at this Michigan offense, dirt bikes. Look at all the dirt bikes. And then
the shortest lived drop ever.
8.5 yards per play against Minnesota.
Glad I didn't dedicate a whole button to it on the mixer.
Right. And then the next week, you got Minnesota giving up 10.2 yards a play to Maryland. Okay. Well, so then next weekend, Michigan State, who had just lost to Rutgers with a 21-game Big Ten losing streak, beats Michigan straight up. All right. That's not a good look. But let's extrapolate that out forward. And Michigan State, then what was the final score of the Iowa game today?
It's 45-7 or something.
Okay. So we can't, because
49-7. I'm shortchanging the Hawkeyes.
49-7. So we can't sit there and say, because in real time you could say, well, maybe this Michigan State loss isn't as bad. They turned the ball over 7 times against Rutgers. Maybe Michigan State turns out to be a pretty good team. Okay. Well, that theory's dead 1 week later.
Because Iowa was 0-2 going into that game. That was winless Iowa.
It done, yeah. Well, exactly. Okay, so that's an added bullet point. But even if they're 2-0, it's still 49-7. And then you have Indiana, and yes, they came into this game 2-0, but they were an unimpressive 2-0. They had an unimpressive win against Rutgers, where they had 320 yards of total offense. They had a maybe even less impressive win against Penn State, where they just kind of somehow figured out a way to win despite having 0 offense. And then against Michigan, what they put up offensively? Do you have the numbers in front of you, Tom?
No, they put up 460 yards.
All right, well, they went off.
Mm-hmm.
And then even the Penn State sort of, attachment to these teams is out the window now with Penn State being just absolutely blasted by Maryland. So there's no way to spin it right now at this point. Like Michigan's
the Big Ten is jacked up, dude.
Yeah, I mean, the Big Ten's jacked up, and Michigan's we have no concrete reason to believe that Michigan is good. And the offense is certainly, it deserves its fair share of the blame. It's not been great, but it's had its moments. The defense is really the thing that's just sort of fallen apart all of a sudden. And everyone's getting theirs against Michigan's defense. And it's almost like they've lost a little bit of their identity, like who they want to be, like pairing, like the personnel doesn't even seem to match the scheme at this point. They've got these big like zone corners out there, and they're asking them to be on these island to play man. They, maybe their best cover guy, maybe Dax Hill, he's playing safety. They just don't like you said, Chip, they're not getting any pressure with it. They're supposed to have these good defensive linemen, and yet quarterbacks are going totally untouched in these games. I just don't know where where's the optimism here for Michigan?
Yeah.
Where's the floor? Where is the floor for Michigan right now?
I think we're at it. I mean, go back to the pass rush. They had 5 sacks in the opener against Minnesota, but remember, it was a Minnesota team that was missing half of its offensive line. Last week against Michigan State, no sacks. Today against Indiana, no sacks. It's like the floor is your 1 and 2, and you got your butt kicked by Michigan State, and now you got your butt kicked by Indiana. That's the floor. They're on the floor.
Okay, so if the Wisconsin game is played and that game is in the Big House and Wisconsin has had all this time missed, are you taking Wisconsin?
I'm not taking Michigan.
I'm not touching it. I am not touching that game if it happens.
Penn State game in the Big House?
I tell you what, the Penn State game is the most dumbfounding game, a result of the week. I think maybe. I mean, what was the score of the Maryland Penn State game last year?
Oh, won by I think they've won every game since Maryland joined the Big Ten by an average of 33 points.
I'm pulling it up. I'm going to pull up that game.
59-0.
I knew it was something crazy like that.
Yeah. Penn State won 59-0.
And so, and this year, and Penn State still, they played competitive against Ohio State. They were really dominant against Indiana, particularly at least on the defensive side of the ball. And then just absolutely gets just housed. I mean, Maryland was making big plays on offense. They were blocking those guys up. Talia was absolutely picking them apart. On the other side of the ball, Penn State just Sean Clifford was just being Sean Clifford. The run game, those guys had no juice. I think they're really missing Journey Brown in particular, and also Noah Kane. But I don't know what's the excuse for that? And there were some really interesting quotes from Jahan Dotson, who's the one guy that is making plays for them these days after the game. I don't know if y'all saw this. He said something to the effect of everyone's not on the same page, or that we need everyone pulling in the same direction. And that's not the case right now. Or it was something that made sort of a very direct point. It was very direct towards the idea that the locker room had some lack of buy-in or something, and so, which
understandable.
Understandable.
On the human level, we've kind of had our eye on these teams that have been late starters, where it's if things don't go well and you've been tasked with a 6-7 game season, no bye weeks, and it's real easy to let, as someone who from the ages of 18 to 22, during my limited responsibility time as a student at the University of North Carolina, let the effort gene really flourish and multiply within myself. I can understand that at that time, you're and this stinks. Forget this. Like a divided locker room in the Big Ten or the Pac-12 or the Mountain West or the MAC, absolutely on high alert when you obviously realize that you're going to fall short of expectations. And that's where Penn State is.
Yeah. I tell you, there was, so we had Harbaugh lose. We had Texas almost lose. They hung in there. They got the win. No, that was look. West Virginia had 2 4th downs, like down by 4, and went for it and didn't get both of them like late in the game. Like they inside the 20, like inside the 15. Like that was absolutely a losable game.
It was a 100% losable game, but at the same time, it was like, I don't know. It was a position where holding that West Virginia plus 6.5 ticket, I kind of felt like down the stretch, I was like, I don't know. Texas might be able to cover this one eventually, because for the first time, maybe the entire season, felt like the defense was making some good 3rd down plays. It felt like there were some, there was something for Chris Ash. There were some celebratory Chris Ash sideline shots.
I don't know. Some people would have you believe that West Virginia was robbed. That's what some people would have you believe.
But before, like the point I was actually getting at was, all right, so you have Harbaugh losing. You had West Virginia, whether you think so or not, Chip, I promise you, like that game was almost a win for West Virginia, and USC also had like needed a onside kick to beat Arizona State.
Oh, and a tipped pass caught in the end zone. The first touchdown before the onside kick was a lucky bounce.
Right.
It was 2 lucky bounces to get USC that win against Arizona State.
So I'm sitting here thinking, like, in the COVID year where just the coaching carousel is not going to move, this weekend felt like we got really close to just like getting a lot of momentum towards some big dominoes falling.
Urban Meyer was quarantined with the big noon kickoff. And
right.
So Texas had to win and USC had to win.
Hey, you know what you can do when you're in a quarantine and you can't be on TV? A lot of time for those Zoom calls with some ADs.
Get yourself an Austin P job if you're not careful.
That's right. That's right. But I mean, it felt like that to me. Like, it felt, first of all, I mean, if Texas had lost to West Virginia, Tom Herman is basically dead man walking.
Yeah.
Right. Like, whether it happens this weekend or not, like he's gone. Clearly Clay Helton isn't gone if he loses to Arizona State, but it felt for a minute like, I mean, it was 27-14, pretty late in the game. I mean, it felt like he was going to just sort of clearly be Arizona State wins this one smooth and easy, and then sort of, all right, now we're in for another year with the USC, and that feels like it's if they lose to Arizona State in game 1, that very much feels like that is that marriage is over. And then you got Harbaugh, who is 1-2 and just lost to Indiana by a lot. And so, man, like that just felt like a significant weekend from a job security standpoint.
There were a lot of agents counting checks. They're getting ready to anyway.
I saw on speaking of, obviously these fan bases are all they take these things hard. Tennessee, we talked about our Hogs. Tennessee loses. I noticed on the Tennessee message board there was like 3 different what about Hugh Freeze posts? Like
Hugh Freeze minute
in here.
Fired up because Liberty, bruh. Justin Fuente got outcoached
by the GOAT.
Like,
did you guys watch the game? Because I really didn't see a whole lot of it.
No, I had to go back to watch the final sequence to see the ice the kicker, but
I saw that.
I iced the block, and then I had to lose on the actual kick. So Khalil Herbert getting ruled out early hurt big time. And Virginia Tech did a good job of sort of responding after falling in that initial hole. But man, I just I mean, Hugh Freeze gets to walk away with the thumbs up, man.
I think for the Monday after this week, my lead is going to be ranking jobs or potential jobs on the most likely to get Hugh Freeze. Like, what's the most likely Hugh Freeze landing spot?
I mean, if it came open, Auburn would be a great fit, right? He's beaten Alabama multiple times. He knows the SEC West. They would love it. But I don't know. I guess it depends on what comes open. You know, like Muschamp today did himself no favors, getting just blasted by A&M.
He got the field goal though, so everything's fine.
So Hugh Freeze would be. I mean, first of all, it's just so kind of hilarious, but not. I mean, it's expected. But everybody wants him now. I mean, every fan base wants Hugh Freeze right now, and I don't blame them. Barton A&M wants him. So, I mean, you want to win games, right? Isn't that what we're trying to do here? Trying to win games. So, I mean, the guy's 2-0 against the ACC this year. He's 7-0.
He still has NC State, and he still has Coastal Carolina. Like, there's an ACC win potentially, and a top 25 win potentially left on that schedule.
I mean, if he runs that table, he'll have a better resume than Boise and BYU. I mean, the margin of victory, the eye test, whatever, it might look a little different, but just in terms of the wins on the schedule, he'll have the best Group of 5 resume out there probably.
Oh man, now I kind of just want like a Liberty BYU bowl game.
Okay, yeah, because you realize that's not for BYU and Liberty. It is not the New Year's 6 spot. It's college football playoff or bust. Or you could be the at-large, because that spot that is reserved for the Group of 5, the fast pass to the New Year's 6, you have to be a conference champion from the Group of 5 conferences. So that means no BYU, and that means no Liberty are eligible for the spot that is saved. They've got to get in just as the highest ranked team available that gets invited to the New Year's 6. So you've got to be there. If you are BYU or Liberty, you probably need to be 5, 6, 7 at the lowest to be able to make sure that you're going to get a spot when there's going to be spots reserved for the second place team in the SEC that doesn't get invited to the college football playoff, and the second place team in the ACC. I think there's only 2 at-large spots plus the Group of 5 spot in the New Year's 6.
Screw that though. Here's the deal. BYU's off this week. All right. They don't have a game. They've only got 2 games left. They've only played 8. They want to schedule more. Liberty's playing Western Carolina this week. How much would it cost Liberty to get out of that Western Carolina game and play BYU instead? How can we make this happen?
Catamounts are looking for that program building experience.
How about a check?
Cincinnati, of course, would like a word, as they would be able to hold that Group of 5 spot also, regardless of what BYU or Liberty do. But
that's what I'm saying. Cincinnati doesn't need to play the game, because if they win the AAC, they're going to get the Group of 5 spot in the New Year's 6. So I want to get BYU and Liberty another resume game to boost their shot at a playoff berth.
Do you still believe no one from outside the group, the Power 5?
Yes. I think today kind of sealed it, because Florida, Alabama, Clemson, or Notre Dame are going to get that 4th spot no matter what.
Because the game was good.
Yeah, whoever loses Alabama, Florida, both, or whoever loses Notre Dame, Clemson in the ACC title game, one of those 2 losers, assuming Ohio State, doesn't lose, one of those 2 teams is getting it.
Regardless of what happens moving forward, it's no longer the top 3 and this whole other division of college football, which is in the top 3. And if it's this whole other division of college football that's not the top 3, then it doesn't really matter what lamb we send to the slaughter. So you might as well give the sweetheart story to BYU. But now that, one of these teams might actually be able to beat these guys. In fact, one of them did. now you gotta figure out who's the best shot.
Yeah. It's a 5-horse race with a 6th horse just kind of looming in the back in Oklahoma. That's kind of just like,
dude, Oklahoma. I'm telling you now. I think Oklahoma is going to be a tempting team late in the year because Jaden Hazelwood's back. Ramondre Stevenson's the running back is back. Ronnie Perkins. I don't know if Trajan Bridges got back this weekend or not, but like they're getting all these guys back. They're getting clicking. They're getting their Kansas beat downs out of the way. They're going to be a tempting team.
Tanner Mordecai got 14 minutes. Tanner Mordecai was in the game, I think, before the end. I think
that over.
Yeah, I think Tanner. Yeah. As somebody who was in on the Oklahoma home over, I was paying a lot of attention to the 3rd and 4th quarter out there in Norman because it took a little bit of effort for us to be able to get there and get over the total. It was just backups in for like large portions of the second half in that game. I thought that it was a good Oklahoma defense game. I know it was Kansas, but still you're swarming to the ball. You're getting good tackles in the backfield. You're coming up with stops. It was it's a
good chance for them to leave feeling good about themselves.
Absolutely. And look, you get next week off and then you got Bedlam. And then you know what? I'm 100% taking Oklahoma to beat Oklahoma State. And then all of a sudden you're coming on the other side and you're like, okay, this is the best 2-loss team in the country.
Do you know what Kansas's point differential is in 6 Big 12 games?
I don't have it pulled up right now.
It's negative 218.
In 6.
What is that? What's that come out to?
A lot. Like 30.
35 points a game or something?
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's good effort.
So Colorado 48, UCLA 42.
Oh yeah.
Buffs.
Darrell
just shoving it up our butts.
That was the other one. Because if along with Harbaugh, Herman, Helton, Chip Kelly is what's the case for Chip Kelly at this point at UCLA? I mean,
we just don't want to hire a coach. Martin Jarman just showed up as the new athletic director from BC. The guy who hired Jeff Hafley, who we believe to be like one of the best hires of that coaching cycle. So like, if you want to play the new AD wants to make a hire, made a good hire back at BC, like that's definitely a path that I could see playing out at UCLA. But there's also the almost the USC situation, which is we've just had to resettle everything. I mean, just trying to do a coaching hire right now is just going to be too much for us to be able to handle. I don't know UCLA that well. Like I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, the power brokers, all that sort of scene, but like, I don't know. That the only argument against not moving on from Chip Kelly is that we've had too much upheaval and we just don't want to do more.
You guys ready to have your mind blown? Martin Jarman, Ohio State guy, hired Jeff Hafley at BC, he's now at UCLA. What if USC, Clay Helton? No, Urban goes to USC. Fickle goes to UCLA. So we bring Ohio State to LA. Meyer versus Fickle.
Just Ohio State guys everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see Fickle.
No, UCLA doesn't really strike me as a Fickle job.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's just
I get you. Yeah. Very, very fun. Very, very fun. In my head, I just imagined Fickle trying to recruit California, and it just like.
So, Carl Durrell gets Colorado after signing day. He inherits his class. He can't even have like a team meeting basically before the pandemic shuts things down. He basically he's hired, and given the timing, he's basically just sort of like, well, like, I guess I'll just take the assistant coaches that you guys already got in the building. Like, you guys seem good enough. Like
Darren Cheverny.
Right, there's my staff.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys are the ones that Mel Tucker didn't take with him. But hey, it worked for you guys. Seem like some ball. You want to come along with me? And then this is a 5-17 from last year. And right out of the gates, he beats Chip Kelly year 3. I mean,
with a quarterback who played 4 games at safety last year and was going to transfer after graduating until he was told that he could play quarterback.
Dude, I mean, it's I don't know. I don't know what the case is. I don't know what the argument is that Chip Kelly is on his way to success because he's not recruiting well.
How bad is it? I haven't paid that close of attention.
I haven't paid close attention to it either this year.
Because you haven't had to, which tells the entire story.
I mean,
I haven't looked at their latest classes, but yeah, I remember like last year's class was a disaster, if I remember correctly.
they're currently 50th in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Last year they finished 33rd, which was like a dramatic uptick from where they were at one point. Before that, they're 40th. So 40th, 33rd, and 50th are the 3 classes Chip Kelly's brought in. 19th. He inherited one where he got finished 19th.
Northwestern 3-0.
Might be the second best team in the Big Ten. I mean,
yeah, but it is pretty Northwesternish though. Like I tried to get some good eyes on that Nebraska game today, and it's still Northwestern. So it's still going to be the same thing. I don't know what the hell happened in that Maryland game. I mean, I don't know. 43-3. What are we doing?
They were just ready that night, and Maryland wasn't.
Yeah.
Well, on the subject of this game, Nebraska, like, shut up. From this point on, you don't get to complain about anything because you can't
play ball, man.
You can't spend all that time. And I get it. Like, I understood the frustration. I understood why they were angry. I understood all of it. But you don't get to spend all that time complaining about the Wisconsin game being canceled and then trying to schedule a non-conference game. And then you come out against Northwestern and you score 13 points.
Man, like that is I just am so tuned out to Nebraska complaining. You know, I had forgotten that they wanted so badly to go play. Was it Central Arkansas?
I think so. Yeah.
No, it was Chattanooga. It was the Mocs. It was the Fighting Mocs of UTC.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to play Tennessee Chattanooga, and that was going to be their game. And the local Chattanooga papers reported it. Big Ten stepped in and shut it down. Nebraska's going to complain, but yeah, I'm just so used to Nebraska complaining here in the last maybe like 6 to 12 months and maybe longer. Like for people that are closer to the Nebraska program, maybe you're used to the Nebraska fans always being like this, but I don't know, man. It's funny you mentioned that because I was like, yeah, that is obnoxious. And I'm just used to it, almost like the buzzing of like a cicada in the summer, you know, just sort of a background noise in college football. It's like, oh yeah, it's college football season. So Nebraska fans are unhappy and buzzing over there about something. I've tuned it out entirely, but good point. I'd totally forgotten that they were very unhappy about not getting to play the Fighting Mocs of the FCS when the game got canceled against Wisconsin.
I had scored 14 points against the Mocs.
So wait, last week's game got canceled. Is that right?
Yeah,
that's the one that got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
So they're 0-2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they played 2 good teams.
Oh no,
no, they have. It's like you can't be that vocal and you can't be that belligerent and you can't be stepping that far out of line and then come out and play like you did today. You know what I mean? Like, you have to, like, if you're that mad or if you think you deserve it that badly, then come out and beat the crap out of Northwestern. Show us how angry you are and show us why you want to play. You know, it's like the dude at the park who talks a whole bunch of crap and then he gets on the court and he's like missing every single shot and he's calling a foul every single time you come within 2 feet of him. That's who Nebraska reminds me of right now.
Kobe. Buckets. All right. So what else stood out from the day?
I want to go back to the Tennessee game, to the Tennessee-Arkansas game. How much did you guys watch much of that?
I watched it in the second half when Arkansas kind of came back to take the lead because I was like, now I got to start paying attention because like the Tennessee was up like 12-0.
Yes, I think it was 13-0 at half.
Yeah.
Total control of the game. Scott, like similar in some ways to Kentucky because like they dominated that Kentucky game, but they in the first half, but those interceptions put them behind the 8 ball, and then Kentucky controlled the second half, and it was a different story. But I guess Jarek Guarantano got banged up, got concussed, knocked out of the game. Brian Maher came in. They couldn't get anything going. I think they threw like 9 passes all game or something.
21
passes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think they threw a few late, but like, so they put Harrison Bailey in the game really late, and
Guarantano was 5 for 8. Brian Maher was 0 for 4. Harrison Bailey 6 for 9.
Okay, so Harrison Bailey. So they had like 13 passes or something before Harrison Bailey got in the game.
Yeah.
At the very end of the game, and at that point, it was just like, all right, nothing else is working. Let's try Harrison Bailey out, and they put him in the game, and like 6 straight plays, he hands the ball off. His first 6 plays in the game, he hands the ball off, and three plays punt, 3 plays, and then you're at 4th down, and it's like 4th and 4, and then they throw it with him, and it's an incomplete pass, or it was intercepted. And then I think his next series, he kind of threw it around a little bit and had 1 picked off at the end of the game. But it's like, I just don't understand. I don't really like, this is the first time that I'm truly having some doubts about this Jeremy Pruitt thing. I've thought he was the right coach. I thought he was the right hire. I thought he was building it the right way, but he may just be too stubborn to understand the way to win today, because that's not how. You don't just run it like, over and over again. I don't care who your quarterback is. Like, if you got to find ways to allow those guys to be successful. So I don't know, man. I mean, if Arkansas year 1 under Sam Pittman beating Tennessee year 3 under Jeremy Pruitt is just, I don't know it's kind of like the Chip Kelly thing. What's our excuse here? What is our, I mean,
dumb jock football.
Yeah. I mean, they've lost 4 straight, including Arkansas and Kentucky. And it's just not that pretty of a product right now. And Sam Pittman, again, like, I think Sam Pittman is such a great example of a coach that is not being stubborn, a coach that doesn't come in with some dogmatic philosophy and he's going to stick to that, but someone is going to, hire who he needs to hire, fill out a good staff, recruit his ass off, and figure out a way to win games. And one of the most, I thought, really the thing that stuck with me from that game, after the game, it was really interesting. Like, Sam Pittman, everyone's going to sort of like, he's going to his media stuff or whatever. And like, every offensive lineman from Tennessee, like, the camera was showing Sam Pittman, they all came over and hugged Sam Pittman. Cade Mays, who he played for at Georgia, came over and hugged him. So no surprise there. But
not just played for. Sam Pittman caught the finger of Cade Mays' dad when Cade Mays' dad's finger got caught in a folding chair and snapped across the room. Because if anybody is going to know what to do with the severed finger, it is going to be the offensive line coach who comes over and says, if we get this sucker on ice, we got the best chance to be able to get it reattached.
But Trey Smith came over to him, and another lineman or 2 came over to him. And this was just when the camera was on him. Who knows how many other guys came over to him? They're all like giving him hugs. And like, I just think, I think being someone that guys want to play for, that projects the demeanor that he cares about you as a person, and the willingness to be malleable as a guy that figures out how to win games, like those are the new traits that are good coaching. I think Sam Pittman has it.
But I don't think it's a new trait. Like,
I think it's a little bit new though. I do. Like, do you not?
In like a complex conversation, especially in terms of being able to like listen to players and be able to be a better communicator and be able to like take on where your players are at and empathize. Like, yes, that is definitely more new school, but it sounds old school when Rusty tells us early, like right as things are about to get going, like when Rusty says, "I'll tell you what, those Arkansas players will run through a wall for Sam Pittman." Like, to hear Rusty explain it, it doesn't sound as new school, right? It just sounds like you're a good leader. Like, you're just good at it, inspiring and motivating your team. Like, in a sense, it is the most old school thing that there is when it comes to coaching up football, which is like, I'm going to motivate you to literally go slam your body into other bodies at a high and violent pace. And like, I just think that Sam Pittman is a fantastic motivator and a good coach. Obviously good relationship builder from the recruiting trail and his success there. But like, I just love that you are right in that he is a little bit of a sign of what the modern coach needs to be, but it is with 100% with some old school tendencies.
Not to belabor this point, but if I'm an AD and I'm hiring a coach, and this is really, I think it's really hard for fan bases to like, they want to just judge a hire by like, how many points per game did his offense score, or how many points per game did his defense allow, or whatever. But if I'm an AD, like, that's kind of the last thing I'm asking a coach is like, well, what's your scheme? Like, tell me how are you going to generate points? Like, I'm going to figure out if this person is like how human they are, how smart, how intelligent they are, how good of a problem solver they are. And then like the other stuff be damned, like that'll work itself out. I don't know. That's kind of a tangent for a different day, but I just think it's really interesting because it seems like there is some contrast there. Because Pruitt is in the Muschamp. He seems like he's in like the Muschamp, Kirby, old school defensive coach way, and this is just the way we're going to do it. And it's not working.
Speaking of things that aren't working, you're having a little bit of a crisis of confidence with Jeremy Pruitt and your belief there. How do you feel about your Pokes after today? They got the win, but it wasn't exactly a confidence booster.
Well, the Tylan Wallace was out. And Kansas State, this is the bread and butter to just figure out how to keep things close. Props to them for being that good at that.
But seriously, Oklahoma State won the game, right? 2018. They had 256 yards of offense.
Spencer Sanders ain't it. I mean, he's it for them. I mean, he's good. He's, that's their guy. But I mean, the idea of Spencer Sanders is better than like the actual guy. Like seeing him step in last year as a redshirt freshman, and every once in a while he has a big throw, and every once in a while he has a big run, and yeah, he has a couple interceptions. But you know what?
He's freshman,
young, yeah. Like he's just kind of an okay quarterback with got a little more pop and juice than some other guys, but he's not really like that guy. But look. I mean, there's still gonna be some moments, and he's got big plays, and they're still gonna be capable, and the defense is still good. So they're just figuring out ways to win for now. Do they have a bye week this week and then Bedlam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we're all right. Yeah. We're okay.
No, but they're going to lose to the Sooners.
Probably.
Did either of you get like eyes on Stanford and Oregon? Because I barely saw anything from that game.
Just a little bit after the Notre Dame game. I kind of tried to watch some of it. Didn't watch much of it in real time.
Yeah, I recorded it, but I had to live blog the Notre Dame Clemson game, so I wasn't really able to pay any real attention to it. So, but Oregon, I guess they won by 21, so it couldn't have been that bad for them.
Yeah, but Davis Mills didn't play.
Oh, that's right.
But I mean,
No. Don't bring your already anti-Stanford bias into this conversation. If Davis Mills doesn't play, we're not going to draw any big judgments on the Cardinal.
Well, we can draw some judgments on them. I mean,
It was 14-7 for a large portion of that game. Like,
Hey.
I look at it as much as being like, okay, so I just think that Oregon, because its defense is so good, is just not going to put much on Tyler Shuck's plate. I just don't think they're going to ask him to do a lot. And I think that that's fine. And they're going to be able to beat a lot of teams. And that's why, for example, even with Davis Mills out, Stanford scores a touchdown early, but Oregon doesn't really respond and pull away. It's 14-7 for a long portion of the game. Like, I think that Oregon will be unspectacular with its wins. I don't know if it's going to go undefeated. That's a little bit too tough of an ask for me to commit, but they'll probably only be a one-loss team on Selection Sunday. And I just don't think they will have enough spectacular wins in that profile to really have an argument to be something other than like, oh yeah, no, Oregon had a good season.
I will say this. So, because I watched a little bit of the back of the game, and I watched a little bit of the beginning, and I did catch. So Stanford's field goal kicker Jet Toner was 0 for 4 on field goals. So, and they did have, and Stanford was sack adjusted, average 6.4 yards per rush. So that's a little back to the old Stanford. So I'm gonna give them a little bit of like an optimistic viewpoint on that side of the ball. But the other issue with Stanford right now is that the defense isn't as dominant as it once was. And this is purely box score scouting here, but Oregon punted its
You could do the personnel too. I mean, the Stanford personnel, especially with some of the opt-outs, doesn't look awesome.
Right. Paulson Adebo opted out. Walker Little opted out. But Oregon today punted on their first drive. They had 8 more drives in the game. They scored 5 touchdowns on those 8, 1 field goal attempt. So 6 of the 8, they had scores or score opportunities. And then 2 of them, they had turnovers. One of them was after an 8-play, 60-yard drive. So the defense doesn't appear to be very, very stout, very stable. And maybe Oregon's offense under Joe Moorhead is something to be excited about. Tyler Shuck certainly seemed to have a night. I mean, every time I sort of looked up, there was highlights of him running around. So that seems to be encouraging.
You touched on it a little bit. You know, you mentioned Jet Toner missed 4 field goals. Oregon's kicker only had 1 field goal. He missed it. So there were 5 missed field goals in this game. And I believe the total at most places closed at 49 or 49 and a half. So there are either some people who are really angry with those kickers, or there are some people who are very grateful to those kickers.
Oregon was 9 of 11 on third downs.
Gonna keep fading Stanford. That's what I'm hearing from the Barton Meditation Chamber.
I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. Maybe it's time for me to just get bullish on Oregon.
I will watch this game on Monday, and I will let you know.
I will not get bullish on Oregon. I will tell you the little that I watched, and it was on the side screen that was on such a stream that it skipped. You know, like when you're like, okay, now I'm really pushing my internet. Like, I got this one on the cable box, I got this one on the stream, and I got this one on this. Oh, I can't ask too much. Every single time that the skipping caught up, I was like, well, Oregon's just kind of mashing them, and it's just working. So, I mean, good for the Ducks. I wish I had more enthusiasm. Maybe I'll talk myself into it, but it'll take something a little bit different for me to be all up on it. Did y'all watch Miami on Friday night? AKA the heartbreak of a Wolfpack fan is unmatched.
I did. I watched it for a little bit, although I mean, I was admittedly paying more attention to the Mountain West game and then the BYU Boise game than I was Miami NC State.
I watched it not in sort of a consecutive way, but in bits and pieces. That was sort of exactly the kind of game that I did, and I picked the under on HQ, but I should have known better. That's the way that thing would have played out.
No, yeah, you should have just taken NC State.
Right.
Yeah, and realize that it's like, yeah, they'll threaten to do the upset and then have their heart ripped out by Derek King, who's going to have 5 touchdowns and like a nearly perfect performance. I mean, the man put the whole daggum team and the whole daggum season on his back. So Miami doesn't play Notre Dame. Miami has lost to Clemson, but Miami doesn't play Notre Dame. Miami is in the ACC championship race right now. You don't have a head-to-head tiebreaker against Clemson, but that was on the line Friday night.
But that's another reason why it was so important that Notre Dame win tonight's game, because now they might not have to worry about any tiebreaker with Miami or any one of those situations. And Clemson has the tiebreaker about Miami. So if you're a Miami fan, you probably should have been rooting for Clemson tonight.
Yeah, you definitely should have been rooting for Clemson. But on Friday night, you were like, oh, crap. If we lose this one, we're in a whole lot of trouble. And NC State had that game won. Disappointing.
Yep.
All right. Anything else from the notebook?
Your heels just bum
Dumped
rush
them.
Duke.
Oh my gosh. Mac Brown was like, I don't know if I've got the Mac in me tonight, but it's like, he said, what was it?
If I had $1 for every time I thought to myself, I don't know if I've got the Mac in me tonight.
You guys know I've been here a long time, and I know that they're not going to judge me by Virginia. They're going to judge me by Duke and NC State, Wake Forest, and the way I do against them. That is somebody who is very tight with boosters, who helped pay Larry Fedora's buyout that allowed for him to be able to be hired. And those boosters do care way more about what happens against NC State and Duke and Wake Forest than what happens on the road in Tallahassee or even in Charlottesville, even with that Reconstruction era hate. To not thump Duke would have been a bad look for Mac with his buddies. And so I think this was a win for the homeboys for Mac Brown.
Tom, I just realized that the team that gave up 10.8 yards per play to Maryland and 8.5 yards per play to the Dirt Bikes gave up 14 points to Illinois and won 41-14.
An Illinois team that was starting its 4th string quarterback. It was missing players on the offensive line. Yeah, it's
okay.
Illinois is an absolute mess right now. But no, it's Minnesota looked okay in this game, but again, it's hard to know.
Man, this is all very difficult to compare and contrast these teams.
The Big Ten is just
Big Ten's a mess.
it is like it's Ohio State, and then it is the shrug emoji, and it's just like, hey, we're only playing to get Ohio State to the playoff anyway, so who cares?
What's happened on Oregon State, Washington State while we've been on this podcast?
Wazoo's
Washington
looking good.
Wazoo's looking good.
The run and shoot not having much trouble adapting. And as we talked about in the Pac-12 win totals, Oregon State's very inexperienced defense, not having trouble giving up yards.
31-20 Cougars lead, 8:32 left in the 4th in Corvallis, and Hawaii up 36-30 against New Mexico out on the Big Island.
Not on TV. The way it's meant to be.
Only on the streams that you find on Reddit.
I don't know what you're talking about. I would never illegally use what's it they put on like baseball games. You cannot, whatever. The Twilight. I'm having my Barton Twilight Zone moment now.
Any reproduction or copyright?
There we go.
Yeah, or whatever.
I would never violate any laws when it comes to watching things.
Fubo TV. You can sign up through the CBS Sports app. It's also where you can find any of the CBS Sports games on cbssports.com. CBS Sports HQ for all your pregame, halftime, and postgame needs.
I think it's time for us to go to bed, gentlemen.
Seriously, I've been like we're about to get some of those, the little barrage of 2-star reviews from Barton Stutter sessions at midnight.
I'm tired of old sleepy Barton on the reaction pods.
This country's moving on into a new era. We are accepting of such things. That is Barton Simmons. You can follow him on Twitter at Barton Simmons. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Purnell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.